Hello and welcome to the NFU Shed Talks podcast. We are here recording live at the ICC in Birmingham at NFU conference. I'm Bizza Walters and I'm joined by some of the presenting team.
Me, Luke Cox.
Me, Mike Greenwood-Wilkins.
Me, Josh Redford.
And me, Jacks Weaver.
Coming up on today's pod, we explore what resilience means to British farming.
We start being strong and stop being on the defensive. So, without being too stark, I think there are lots of opportunities from farming to be creative, to reconnect with markets in a different way if you take farming for resilience seriously.
We quiz Farming Minister Dame Angela Eagle.
Well, what is more important than making sure we have enough food to eat? Clean water to drink, properly used, and clean air.
Absolutely.
The things that DEFRA involves itself with as a department are quite important, even if they've been taken for granted in the past, I think.
Outgoing Director General Terry Jones reflects on 10 years at the top.
For 118 years, this organisation has pulled together tens of thousands of small business people to have their collective voice be louder than it would be if they tried to lobby on their own. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I just keep coming back to that unique partnership that we as professional staff are in this, I think, really privileged position that we get to work with well-briefed members, and together we make a real difference to British farming.
Plus the first podcast interview with this year's Myrick Raymond Award winner.
Completely unexpected. I feel like a bit of a fraud, really. I don't quite know why I've won, but it's an absolute honour. And when you look round the room last night, the amount of farmers there that are doing amazing things day in and day out, how I got selected, I do not know.
We are sat here in a literal shed in one of the halls at the ICC at conference. And guys, it's so great to actually be together.
We're all in the same room. I wasn't expecting us to be in the lunch hall looking at all the delegates hustling and bustling the other side of the window. But yeah, we're all here in the same room in Birmingham.
We are. It's really nice to have all of the presenters actually, in one go, all coming together. It's super exciting. I do feel like this would be too hot for livestock in this shed right now.
Oh my gosh, it is so warm.
We're not putting any livestock in the shed. I'm going to put it in my garden and put it on wheels. And every time we record the podcast, take it round.
It's going on tour.
It's the podcast shed.
Announcement.
It is, and we've had the opportunity to speak today with lots of people who have been talking at NFU conference. They've done their pieces on stage and they've come and joined us in this shed to give us a bit more insight into what they're talking about.
And also, I think Jax has been out and about chatting to some of our members and attendees at conference, getting some on-the-spot ideas of
What's
how
the
people are
vibe,
finding it.
Jax? What the
It's really, really positive out there. I think everybody seems really excited for conference, pleased to be together. I think it's the sort of lull after the storm, and I think everyone's just really excited to sort of think, what's next? Going into summer, hopefully, some of the things we've weathered, including the weather, are coming to the end a bit. So I think it's a really, really positive feeling out there.
We've had the opportunity to speak to loads of our amazing presenters and speakers from conference here today. My wonderful fellow presenter, Jax, has been chatting with outgoing Director General Terry Jones. Are you excited to chat to Terry, Jax?
I personally think I got the best straw here with the Terry interview because he's got so many stories to tell. It's going to be really interesting to see how he's reflecting on his time here, and hopefully maybe we can ask him what's next. But I think it'll be really interesting to sort of have a chat with him and see, firstly, how much he's enjoying conference. It's his last one. He might be viewing it all a little bit differently. So really looking forward to that. I think, though, you've got the bit of responsibility on your shoulders this afternoon. Your interview coming up with Minister Angela Eagle. How are you feeling and what are you going to ask her?
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm excited. I'm glad that we've got Emma Reynolds here speaking at conference, and hopefully, fingers crossed, she'll have some positive announcements to make, a little bit more detail about SFI I'm hoping for. We just need a bit more certainty across the board right now. So hopefully, Emma will give us a few things to tee up, and then we can grill Angela for a bit more detail on what that actually means for farmers and members up and down the country. But first, Luke and Bizza are going to be chatting to Professor Tim Lang and Harry Smit all about British agricultural resilience.
Thank you, Tim and Harry, for joining us. Can you please just tell us both a little bit about yourselves?
Well, let me kick off. I'm Harry Smit. I'm working at Rabobank.
Rabobank, a Dutch cooperative bank founded by farmers, so we have a big tradition in agriculture. Myself as well, I'm a son of a farmer born in the Netherlands.
I'm the other end. My name's Tim Lang. I'm a professor emeritus. That means I'm an old man. Professor emeritus of food policy at City St George's, University of London. And you couldn't be further from a farm from our offices.
No.
But I was a farmer.
Fantastic. And you've both just been on stage here at NFU conference talking about resilience. So can you tell us what is resilience and what does it mean to farmers?
Resilience, to be very pompous, is the Latin word. It's from the word resilio, and literally even from the Romans we know it as bouncing back. But it's come to mean lots of different things, and part of the difficulty of resilience is that it can mean different things to an architect, to a farmer, to an ecologist, to a physicist. If I hit the wall of the shed, my hand will hurt, but the shed will probably still be there. With ecosystems, it's not like that. You can hit them and they have to become something else. And we're not clear yet what we mean by resilience for food and farming. And yet here we are at a conference with the theme of resilience, and Harry and I both brought here to talk about it. So I'm interested in people and resilience and feeding people in crises, in shocks. The bouncing back from shocks is what interests me. But you can take a long-term perspective as well on shocks, but also in resilience generally, which is what Harry is more about.
Yeah, and I can only agree to that. And I think in simple words, to me, it's being able to continuously feed the population. That's the key issue in this resilience of a food system. And in my presentation, I had like 4 elements of a strategy that help increase resilience. One is that you do your research, that you can anticipate and you have insights on how things work out when they occur. Secondly is that you have governance in place, that you can steer instead of only react, so that you can plan and that you can steer for the better of the whole instead of only for one individual or one company. A third one is reducing dependencies and becoming more flexible, having strategic buffers or reserves, redundancies, local production, that kind of stuff. And finally, part of resilience strategy should also be improving or innovating and transforming, changing the system a bit, that you build a more resilient system as a whole, less dependent, more circular, that kind of strategies, when all the other 3 will not suffice.
I agree with that. I think the core good reason for you as the National Farmers Union having resilience as a theme is because it's about feeding people, and all the complexity that both people like Harry and I deal with is about how can you maintain the capacity to feed people, and what does that need? What's the infrastructure of that? One of the themes of my talk was about the different sorts of shocks that are coming. We've got some slow burn shocks. Climate change is happening, it's already here, it's going to get worse, it's accelerating. We've got brutal wars going on that are destabilizing geosystems. And we've got new sorts of shocks of consumers operating and acting on the basis of sometimes misinformation.
And sorry to interrupt quickly, Tim, but would that be the same, are the shocks the same as risks to farmers? Is it the same thing?
Well, whether they come to farmers is a moot point, to be honest. Part of the thing, both Harry and I, if you've noticed, have used the term food system, because we now know in the last 50 years the analysis has gone from, say, 70 years ago, you talked about farming, then the people. But we've got hugely complex supply chains and many, many actors and different weaving of ingredients going across borders, flying around the globe, and sometimes belting up and down just little countries. And unpicking that has made us develop this notion of these 2 words, the food system. But there's something that we've created which is highly complex and now has vulnerabilities. And we're having to rethink quite what we want it to be. And a core theme has been in the need now to shift away from just-in-time logistics, where you have no redundancy, no storage, no surplus. Everything's done just when you need it. maybe that's going to have to change.
I think an interesting observation also is that you can separate out the upstream part of the value chain, the farmer where it's all taking place, and the downstream supply chain, part of the supply chain, the retail shop. I think resilience is a bigger issue downstream, where it's much more about just in time. Whereas at the farm level, shocks and so on, they have an impact, but mostly only in a certain region or in a certain area or in a certain country, never for the whole food system. And therefore, and also if you look at, let's say, wheat farming, once you have your crop in, then you have wheat for a full year available. And there's not much that can stop wheat from growing. Only when there's a surplus of rain or shortage of rain. That can be an issue. And then that's often only locally, not for a whole country as a whole. So there, in my view, the resilience issue is more about buffering a little bit better, whereas downstream, the situation is much more vulnerable. It's all just in time. It's everyday delivery, fresh products. There's a continuous flow of products, and there's no resilience at all in that part of the value chain. So there, it's much more vulnerable to those kind of issues.
A lot of what you both talked about is the opportunities of what you can do on your local scale. Harry, you talked in your presentation about how the UK is a desirable market for imports. How much of a threat are trade deals to what we can do domestically and our own opportunities? How much can trade deals actually give opportunities to other countries to take up the UK's opportunity that we should be maximising ourselves?
Yeah, well, I think the UK farmer has the benefit of being close to the UK consumer. So those foreign producers, they are always at a bigger distance. So they always have a disadvantage of having a bigger transport distance. On the other hand, there's some... They can be cheaper because they don't have to adhere to many standards and that kind of stuff. So that's like what I can call unfair competition. It's not a level playing field. So there you need to be, you don't want to throw away your own sector just because you have then cheaper food. That is not going to be cheap in the long term, because in the end they have to make the same transformation, and then you've given up your own domestic sector. So there you need to provide some protection against this kind of competition that is not coming from a level playing field.
There's a real risk there, isn't there, that UK can lose out, and like you say, the long-term impacts could actually be quite problematic, couldn't they?
And Tim, before you answer that question, you mentioned in your talk earlier that you'd visited the Orkney Islands, which I've been up to, and I've worked up there on farms, and it's a fascinating place, and there's a lot going on up there. But as you said, the beef that they produce up there couldn't be more local because of the layout of the land and what it's used for. But then it has to get on a boat, head back to the mainland, where it goes to the abattoir and is butchered, and then goes off from there. So how can we invest in places like that locally to be more local? If there's not much money in the system?
With great difficulty is the short answer. Money flows is a key underpinning. You have Harry, a banker here, and that's right. Banking underpins a lot that we can do in the future and have done in the past. One of the demands that comes from the sort of thinking I'm now associated with is saying, if your food system was really designed around feeding people in shocks, what would be the infrastructure that you need to enable that to happen, whether it's weaponization of type shock or a climate change shock or a passing submarine cutting the cable that brings your electricity in, which is a big factor for the Orkney Islands. Yeah. Well, the Orkney Islands is prepared on that front. It's got 6 months of diesel to kick in and start people's local generators. There's no equivalent of that on food for the Orkneys, and I think they should. In
your presentation, you gave a really nice example around how much water the average household uses. It was 135 litres of water a day.
It's astonishing.
It's absolutely astonishing. So when we're talking about the risk for the farmers who are listening to this podcast, obviously livestock farmers needing a lot more water than that. So what can farmers be doing on the ground now to prepare themselves for shocks?
Well, look, you don't need me, an ex-farmer, to tell farmers who are in that situation. The answer is you've got to have some storage or have less cattle. You know, there are trade-offs, as the bankers would say. Which is why there have been very big issues about farming operations that need water wanting to store it, and then it becomes a planning issue, an environmental issue. And that's raising the delicacy of ecosystems and food production. One of the points I was trying to make very strongly, came out of my report in my speech, was that we shouldn't set ecosystems against food production. They actually need to be all of it. Food, the old language used to be multifunctionality of land, that is doing lots of things. Food is very important to that. And we in Britain need to be reminded that actually a central purpose, arguably the main purpose of farming, is to feed people. But it's not just feeding people. You've got to look after the ecosystems. You've got to look after the people.
Well, with no ecosystem, you can't produce
You can't farm. Well, you can short term, but not for very long.
By the way, I wouldn't be too worried about resilience of the food system. This system is built for shocks. We've had adverse weather. We see sometimes doubling of prices and then suddenly halving again. It's a volatile world that we operate in as a food system. And the whole system is also built to deal with these kind of shocks on a regular basis.
Well, it isn't. I disagree with you, Harry. I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying, but the reality is, if you're in the Ukraine or if you're in Gaza, if you are blockaded, suddenly your food system collapses. The point is, we're now in a world where the stakes are getting higher. The software attacks on the food system. Food manufacturing is the number one, or manufacturing generally, is the number one area of growth of ransomware. And we're seeing the normalization of that. When I was interviewing people, all anonymized because they were very senior people, they were being very concerned about that there was a constant new channel of what resilience planning meant, which is trying to catch up with the brilliance of the ransomware merchants, because they're very smart and they're ahead of almost everyone else. So I don't think we're in that old world where the food system is automatically resilient and deals with volatility. There is a new order of volatility. You can't see us, Harry and I are smiling.
It's not that I disagree.
This is a big argument.
It's not that I disagree on that, but it's look at the Ukraine situation. They're still producing about 80% of their average production in the past couple of years. Yeah. And what's made that possible? Despite all the bombing that's taking place and all the land that's out of production because it's filled with mines and so on, that system is proving quite some resilience there. And I think one key element in that, what I read about, is that communication is essential in that system, and having access, because in one place there's a lack of this, in another place there's a lack of that, but being able to bridge those kind of shortages or for spare parts or for a certain machine or for a certain product, having the communication in place to optimize at a higher level than the individual operation, and that's making the whole system more resilient.
Sorry, I want to quickly move on before we run out of time to talk about risk and reward, because Harry, you talked about or touched on that in your presentation, and how growth can be in the value of the product, not necessarily the volume. And you said the UK is the largest food market in Europe by spend. Now, I think it'd be fair to say that farmers in the UK would feel like they carry the vast majority of the risk and very little of the reward. So if we're the largest food market by spend, where's that money going through that supply chain?
Typically, a lot of it is going to the food processors that are making, on average, at least that's what I know from the Dutch situation, they make higher returns on capital than farmers do. But it's also a matter of organizing yourself in a proper way to deal with such a food industry. And I think that in UK agriculture, farmers are less organized. They don't have, like we mentioned was mentioned in the discussion, you don't have the cooperatives in place to provide some countervailing power towards normal food companies and combine critical mass and improve negotiating power with off-takers. I think that's part of the weakness as well. And in my view, that's something that can be restored. And if only 10 farmers today would stand up together and put their produce in one pool and go to off-takers, well, we have this whole pool of products instead of only one from one farm, but this whole pool of 10 farmers, and negotiate a slightly better deal. Then the next year, it will be those 10 farmers, there will be a couple more wanting to join for that little premium. And then when you build such a kind of critical mass over time, before you know, you have big cooperatives in place to at least start with negotiating prices. And then when you have a critical mass, maybe you can also create the cash flow to make an investment in a processing facility or in other ways of adding value to your products before you sell it. So it's not unthinkable to work on these kind of future.
Bringing it back to British farming, what are the opportunities around resilience? Like what can we be doing and what are the opportunities that come with that?
I think the resilience agenda changes everything for British farming. It means they start reconnecting with feeding people. It means they start thinking, if our prime purpose is about feeding people in and from and for sharks, it means we start needing to get enough money. We start being strong and stop being on the defensive. So, I mean, without being too stark, I think there are lots of opportunities from farming to be creative, to reconnect with markets in a different way if you take farming for resilience seriously.
Tim, Harry, thank you very much for joining us. Tim, in your presentation, you talked about planning for the worst day, not the best, and being in a fit state of preparedness. And Harry, you talked about the circle of concern, circle of influence, circle of control. I'd encourage all our listeners to look back at your presentations from conference and hear a bit more about what you talked about. You come straight from the stage to join us here, so thank you very much. And we won't hold you up from your lunch anymore. So thank you for joining us.
Sorry I missed you guys, I was held up.
It's great that you're here now, Josh, and we've just had a great interview from Professor Tim Lang and Harry Smit.
I'm glad I was in time for who we've got next. We've got the Minister of State for DEFRA, Dame Angela Eagle.
So, Minister, welcome to our Shed Talks podcast. Welcome to conference. Thank you so much for coming and being here.
I've never seen a shed with so few tools.
It's quite a bare shed. It's new. We need to fill it up. How have you found conference so far? Have you enjoyed your day and what you've heard and the conversations you've had?
Yes, I have enjoyed the day. I've just come from a very interesting meeting about the uplands. That's why I'm late, actually, because I was so interested. I nearly didn't arrive.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us. The theme of conference, thank you. The theme of conference this year is building farming's resilience. Yep. And the reason we wanted to focus on this is because the last couple of years has been really tough for farmers' resilience. Everything from weather to inflation to BPS loss, environmental schemes, disease pressures, energy costs, labour costs, all of these things have really felt like we've got so much headwind against us as farmers. It hasn't been easy. So can you give our farming members listening some confidence that you are going to be able to help us in smoothing out that volatility and help to build farming resilience going forward?
Well, I think the Secretary of State in her speech pointed out all of those headwinds herself. We're acutely aware of them. And I think one of the most important things that she announced in her speech was the Farming and Food Board, which is there to try to create a more productive and more profitable farming sector. And so we're working with the industry across the board to try to do that. That's the first time it's happened in a very long time. And I think it's important that we can use that board, which will meet for the first time, she announced in March, to try to set a direction so that there can be more certainty about what it is we're trying to do. One of the things that the Secretary of State was keen to mention in her address to the conference today was we need to get profitability going and we want the sector to grow. Yeah. And so those two things I think are quite good places to start as a lodestar for the direction we need to go in. We want to produce more food in the UK for UK consumers. We want also to see trade deals as an opportunity rather than a threat as well. I think there's a lot more potential for us to do that.
Talking about
interrupt
growth.
me.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's not a problem.
Talking about growth, is that purely economic growth? You're talking about the industry to grow. Is that, purely financial and economic, or are you looking at in terms of, number of farmers or environmental, or, because I know we're focusing on profitability, which I think is really key and I think is really important.
Yeah.
But when you talk about growth,
what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, in this context, it actually means growing more food and being more resilient, and that is why there's two sectors that we picked for the Farming and Food Board to have a look at first, as the first two sectors to be looked at. One is horticulture, because I certainly think that the potential for increasing homegrown production of fruit and veg is there. We've lost quite a lot of market share recently. And so we want to have a proper analysis of why that is and see what we can do to remove some of the barriers to carrying on producing the food that we eat here. So that is growth. Obviously, economic growth is important for the country. So I don't think the two are at odds with each other.
No, definitely
but
not.
To be clear, I'm talking about growing more food and having. I think we produce about 67% of the food that we eat in the UK, and I think if you take out mangoes and bananas and things you can't grow in the UK very easily, it's closer to 75%. But actually, there are sectors where we're not as good as we should be.
It's really interesting.
I think the economic side is really important, that profitability side, because I think it can often get forgotten. Farming is sort of seen as this vocation, but it is also a business, and we want to contribute to the economy and help in that way. So,
well, what is more important than making sure we have enough food to eat, clean water to drink, properly used, and clean air?
Absolutely.
I mean, the things that DEFRA involves itself with as a department are quite important, even if they've been taken for granted in the past, I think.
Looking at the press release that came out today, it's great that DEFRA have listened to the NFU feedback, and I'm going to hone in on the future of the uplands. And actually the uplands are really key in our lamb market, because a lot of our lamb starts life in the uplands, and it's key for our breeding. You've just come out of a meeting with some of our upland chairs. How did it go, and what are the sort of key takeaways that you could share with us on that?
Well, I started by asking them how well the schemes actually work for the uplands, because I have heard a lot of comments that the schemes aren't really designed as well as they could be, and I know there's a lot of potential sort of clashes between the environmental sort of agency and upland farmers about stocking and things like that.
And payment rates and that side of things.
There's a range of things that I wanted to ask them about. How can we make sure that our schemes fit what is a diverse but very particular area? And as I say, I was late coming down here because it was such a fascinating discussion. And I think there's more listening for me to do to see what we can do to make sure that we get our upland land into the right kind of schemes, but also facilitate upland farmers into schemes that they can easily engage with that improve the environmental outcome. Because at the moment, our schemes aren't always easy to engage with, which is why the announcements today about simplifying SFI and trying to get smaller farmers who haven't been engaged as much into schemes is a really important principle.
I know you're picking it up part-way through, but we had the Uplands Task and Finish group, which obviously have been feeding in. Is there scope to continue conversations with that group, with the ongoing SFI conversation? I know, the announcement today, but we'll be having conversations next year and the year after, and would you continue talking to them in that space?
Definitely, but also Dr. Hilary Cottam, the work that I want her to do to start doing very place-based, very specific, ground-up work, starting in Dartmoor and Cumbria. I mean, the idea is that kind of work is about demonstrating that actually local people and farmers and land managers know the most about the land that they're stewarding, and we should listen to them. it takes longer to come up with proper policies when you do them ground up like that. And often politics is about being in a rush and trying to get things done to tight timetables. But I'm quite excited about the potential of the work that Hilary Cotter's
I'm
going
really
to be
interested
doing.
to see how that plays out.
Yep.
It bodes well for me. You acknowledge the complexities that some of the schemes have sort of posed to farmers for being able to engage with them and get involved with them. Our President Tom Bradshaw said the latest update on the rollout of SFI appears to strike the right balance between simplification and flexibility for farmers, which is brilliant. He has also told conference this morning that transparency around the farming budget is absolutely critical to us understanding how the new schemes are being rolled out and how the fairness of engagement is working. What assurances can you give to us farmers and our members that is going to happen going forward?
Oh, it will happen. I mean, we have already had a comprehensive spending review, unlike our predecessors that used to live year to year, where we've got a 3-year budget envelope and we know that £11.8 billion of money is available to use in environmental and farming support schemes. The Secretary of State announced, I think, about £340 million of grants for innovation and capital expenditure today, on top of making the SFI announcements. And when we're closer to the scheme opening, we'll be able to be more transparent about the money that's available. It's a lot harder than you might think, because a lot of these schemes are on 3-year and some on 5-year budgets, all begin and end at different times.
All cross. Well, we do appreciate why that's complicated.
It's not always as simple as it might sound to come up with a solid number.
We know how the crossover of those impact our own farm budgets at home, so we do appreciate the complexity. You mentioned the productivity funding that was announced today. One of the big issues that members have had is the upfront payment requirement to engage in those, which really disincentivises smaller and more financially hard up farmers to engage with them, as well as the inability to buy second-hand equipment, for example. Are any of those areas going to be addressed in the new scheme going forward? Do you acknowledge the issues that poses?
I acknowledge the issues. I think from second-hand point of view, I have had a brief look at some of the suggestions around that. I think new equipment, though, is probably meant to be more efficient and effective, and so if you're going to be using second-hand equipment, that's a slightly odd use. But no decisions have been made yet. I appreciate that there are.
I suppose
there are difficulties in people who don't have lots of money in the bank accessing some of these
upfront
things.
costs and then
so the
clawing
key
the
thing
money
is
back.
if there emerges problems with that are particular, and we can do something to ease them, we may well be able to do that. But I'm all ears for these kinds of things. It's important to know what the practical sort of disincentives for engaging in something that would be positive for everybody if it were done.
This is the thing, it could really positively impact a lot of people that need the money and can't access it in the current sort of structure.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for your time.
Pleasure.
I'm really I wish we could continue this conversation. I'm sure we could talk about
Could ask
schemes
you questions all day.
But we are going to have to call time as we've all got places to be going on to. But thank you so much for spending 10 minutes with us.
Pleasure.
And agreeing
Thank you
to
for
come on
coming
the
to
podcast.
conference, and thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for the questions.
What a fantastic chat we've had with Dame Angela Eagle there. Hopefully the listeners to the podcast got some really good insight into what the government are doing within DEFRA at the moment. Next up, we have our departing Director General, Terry Jones, in conversation with Jacks.
I am joined by Terry Jones, our Director General of the NFU, and I'm going to try the impossible task of summarising 10 incredible years at the helm into 5 minutes on our little humble podcast. So I'm going to kick off with conference. How is your conference going? What has been the best thing so far?
It's easy to think of conference as just 2 days, but actually it's many, many weeks of planning. We have to think about the theme. We have to think about what we're trying to get out of the the 2 days. And then from there, we're thinking about speakers, we're thinking about messaging. And then there's all the logistics. And it's really like a game of three-dimensional chess, getting all of the right people in the right place at the right time and getting them to say the right things. And I think it's been a fabulous day so far. I'm really pleased that we went with resilience as the theme. There's, I think, a really big challenge at the moment. If you look at the geopolitical uncertainty, if you look at some of the questions that are being asked about how we keep ourselves fed and keep the lights on in such an uncertain world, then this was absolutely the right thing to have gone with. And we've had a really fabulous lineup of speakers so far that have been able to bring that to life. I think Tom had a great opening speech today. He was really able to talk about what we'd done in the last year, but then look to the future. And he's really started to talk about a vision for the future, what British agriculture needs to thrive and to be resilient and to be a really important part, not just of the economy, but of the social fabric and the resilience of the United Kingdom. And I thought he did a brilliant job there. We had the kind of just the bundle of energy that was Tim Lang, and I was lucky enough to contribute to the National Preparedness Commission report, and he brought that to life as well and talked, at length about some of the challenges in the UK food system, and if we're being honest, in that uncertain world, what we might need to think about in the future if we're to ensure that we're to keep all the people fed that are on this group of islands. And then that was followed by Harry Smit with a slightly more sort of data heavy, but still fascinating insight into farm resilience. So, we've got a really exciting afternoon ahead and plenty more to go. And later tonight, I'll be on stage here, making sure that things go smoothly at the dinner. And I think that's a really great bit about this. Yes, we bring members in to hear what's going on and to, I suppose, do some thought leadership, provoke some thinking amongst members. But then in the evening, they get the opportunity to let their hair down. They get to see old friends. They get to make new ones. We feed them brilliantly. I think there's 1,200 fillet steaks, beautifully and perfectly cooked, will be laid out here in under 10 minutes tonight. And it's quite a feat, and it's the best of British food, as you would expect.
And how do you think the members are feeling, having spent lunch and this morning talking to them? Do you think they're feeling more positive, more hopeful?
Look, I mean, naturally, they're an optimistic bunch. They're small businessmen, and I think as a general rule, they're always looking for opportunities. And that's what I've seen today, is that I think now we're out from underneath of the black cloud, to an extent, of inheritance tax. I think people are able to look ahead with a little bit more confidence. What they now need, and what people have said to me at conference and before in recent weeks, we just need clarity. We need clarity on agricultural policy, specifically on SFI. We need clarity from the market. We need clarity on wider regulation. And I think if they can get all of that, then people are in a better place. And I think days like today inspire people. They hear, particularly when we get the farmer panels up. And people can hear their peers talk about what they've done to build more resilient businesses, to embrace technology and so on.
I mean, I think everyone feels hopeful. It's obviously a beautiful event, beautiful place. So, I think there's a really good feeling in the room, and hopefully that's reflective of the year ahead. So I wanted to ask you next about, your time steering the NFU ship. You've become a figurehead in your own right through many presidents, vice presidents, etc. What have been the highs and maybe some of the lows that you've gone through on this journey?
I think the highlight and the low light, weirdly, in summary, has been inheritance tax. A really, really tough 14 months where we were trying to make the case for why these were really unfair reforms, and it was a punishing period for the organisation. And I think as staff, we really felt that, because all our colleagues really get and understand farming, and they really understood how this felt like an attack on the family farm. And they wanted to do whatever they could to try and make it right. And then the elation of getting that rise in the threshold on the 23rd of December was like nothing else. It was
Christmas come early, wasn't it?
It was like
amazing.
Christmas come early. And I know it doesn't help everyone to the extent that they would like to be helped, but it has made a massive difference to lots and lots of family farms out there. And I think more generally, if you could bottle that, the highlights have been when we've campaigned and when we've done stuff that has benefited members, whether it was retaining the rebate on red diesel, when we won some of the court cases, whether it was the win on IHT. If I look back into my first career at the NFU, because this is my second stint here, small victories for me have been things like getting the grocery code adjudicator into the manifesto before the 2010 election. So those have been great things because, we all like to win. But I think I also look back with some fondness on some of the changes and some of the reforms we've made. I think we've made the NFU a more professional organisation. I think we've got a really clear sense of our strategy and what we need to do through the lens of people, structure, culture and finance. And I look back very fondly and very proudly. But I think just more generally, it's been the people.
Yeah. Do you think that's who you're going to miss?
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to work with some fabulous professionals, many of whom are national kind of voices and leaders in their fields, or even international. But as well, the other part of that partnership has been to work with well-briefed members. And this is what makes the NFU a kind of unstoppable combination, that it partners professional staff with well-briefed members and they achieve phenomenal outcomes in lobbying. And it gives us this tremendous ground game, which means that the NFU punches so far above its weight compared to its contribution to the economy. And lots of other trade bodies and lots of other sectors of the British economy are quite envious of what we do. And on the 23rd of December, we had people in my position running other bits of the economy saying, what a phenomenal campaign you've run. So
it's not an insult when they call us a well-organised lobbying organisation, is it? It's a compliment.
It's not, sometimes it's sort of thrown around as if it is, but I think it's the, when people talk about the hand of the NFU doing stuff.
Good.
Well, from a membership point of view, I think there's no better endorsement than that we might get from third parties.
You've got all this policy knowledge, all this industry knowledge, your experience of a fabulous career. I hope you don't mind me asking, but what's next?
So look, this has been a really big exec role, being the chief executive in a sense of the largest trade association in the UK. There's nothing else that really gets near us in terms of turnover or numbers of staff and so on. I don't think I want to do that again.
Sure.
And what I'd like to do is, I've got some other priorities. There's some other things I'd like to do. I'd like to see more of my family, more of the children, but I'd also still like to make a difference. So there are a number of things that I want to kind of pursue. One of my sort of great personal passions has been dementia, because I've there's some experience of that in the family, but also mental health from a rural perspective. And if I can make a difference on both of those counts, then I hope to. And I've recently become a trustee of RABI.
Wow.
But I would also like to, having done some board work, some non-executive work, I was on the Food and Drink Sector Council, I was on the Pay UK Advisory Board and so on. I've got this itch around non-executive work that I'd really like to try and scratch. And actually today, I've been announced as one of 2 new board members on the Marine Management Organisation, which is part of DEFRA. And just that opportunity to kind of still do something in that DEFRA space, still, in food production and the natural environment, but in a kind of new, kind of get out of the way of the NFU and go and work in a kind of different part of the economy is really exciting. So, and look, some advisory work and a bit of farming. I'm my brother's the great farmer, but the opportunity to help my wife with her dairy farming business in Cheshire, but also to try and help out a bit with my parents' business and my brother's business down in South Wales is an opportunity not to be missed. And it'll be a collection of things that I'll do in the future, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Really exciting things coming up, and hopefully a well-deserved break over the summer before you really get your teeth into everything else. Nice long summer holiday or something.
Well, maybe I'm not the sort of person who really likes to put his feet up, but who knows?
Yeah, maybe your wife will persuade you.
Yeah.
So conscious that we've not got a huge amount of time, but I think we know your messaging to members. We know your messaging to the staff and to our future leaders, our current office holders, our future office holders. But what would you say to any non-members? What would be your parting message to them?
Well, look, I suppose I would say this, wouldn't I? But there are lots of reasons to join. There's the network. You get the opportunity not just to meet hundreds, nearly probably over 1,000 of your fellow farmers today, but you probably get to meet all sorts of interesting people. We've got people here today. You'll be sat at lunch next to maybe somebody from a foreign embassy, from an NFU alike from around Europe. We've got lots of European farming organisations here. You may be sat next to somebody from retail or a processor. You get the opportunity to build, I think, a fabulous network within the organisation. You get access to advice and information through the fabulous colleagues that we've got working at regional level, but also through Call First, and then also our technical specialists in Stoneleigh and elsewhere. And you get the opportunity to get your voice heard. And for 118 years, this organisation has pulled together tens of thousands of small business people to have their collective voice be louder than it would be if they tried to lobby on their own. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I just keep coming back to that unique partnership that we as professional staff are in this, I think, really privileged position that we get to work with well-briefed members, and together we make a real difference to British farming.
That's brilliant. Thank you. We all wish you the best of luck. I know there's a string of leaving events, but best of luck. And well, I'm sure you will be keeping in touch and we'll definitely be seeing you.
Well, thank you very much. And look, no one person is bigger than the NFU. So I think I'll conclude by saying I look forward to seeing what the NFU does next.
Brilliant.
Because it's a fabulous organisation and I wish it every single success.
Look, it's going to be really strange not having Terry leading the organisation. He's been here since I've been here, but we're in really safe hands. We've got Sophie Throop starting soon, and we're really excited to see what direction the NFU goes in next. But we're now joined by Charles Godby, who was presented with the Myrig Raymond Award at the conference dinner last night for his tireless campaigning on a range of issues, most notably the family farm tax. Hughes, congratulations. How does it feel? You said you've been in a bit of a shock.
Yeah, completely unexpected. I feel like a bit of a fraud, really. I don't quite know why I've won, but yeah, it's an absolute honour. And when you look round the room last night, the amount of farmers there that are doing amazing things day in and day out, how I got selected, I do not know.
Just to explain to listeners, what was sort of the basis, what you've been up to? Why were you nominated for this?
I think, well, I've done a fair lot. Well, what came out last night, what they discussed on the video as they played the awards was my work on the inheritance tax. I did a bit of a social media post with Lego trying to explain how inheritance tax is affecting farmers and the difference between APR and BPR, which I think was used by a lot of people when they approached their MPs. And I think it was also picked up by the BBC and actually helped them to understand as well and got it out to the wider media.
You had a good time at dinner last night.
It was superb, fantastic food.
You're a duty driver, so you weren't drinking.
No.
For me, I love all the different stories you get from the different sort of regions and Wales with the Myrig Raymond Award. It's pretty awesome, and yeah, I don't know how they pick between them, but a bit of imposter syndrome this morning.
A massive amount.
So I was doing a bit of reading beforehand, and your passion is bridging the gap between sort of the producer and the consumer. This sort of goes, back to grassroots NFU, how we operate. How can you use that for other campaigns, do you reckon, moving forwards?
I think any publicity anybody can get is brilliant and just helps us to get food and farming into the wider public eye. I actually think all of us have a duty to be telling our story. I mean, we produce the best food in the world, but it's the story and the provenance that goes with it that actually adds the value. And so I think we all have a duty, whether we're selling direct or not, or, into the mass market, just by communicating with the public, letting them understand what we do, how we do it, how we protect the environment as well as produce their food. It all adds to bridging the gap and getting that knowledge to the consumer and helping them to make informed choices on what they're buying.
One of the things you did was organise a large gathering outside Warwickshire County Council. You went the next stage and you actually addressed the council to explain the real life impact of IHT on family farms. How did you do that? We've already talked about your sort of Lego example, and how did it feel communicating a different topic to a non-farming audience?
So I think it came about, initially I was approached by my local borough council to speak in their chamber, and we took a group of farmers there. And then I think it was with Nick Watts and Warwickshire NFU. We ended up going over to Warwick County Council. We staged a protest out on the front, just a quiet, friendly one, just a presence, really. The councillors were very proactive with us. I think that they were pleased to see us there. Speaking in the chamber, very, very different, actually. And what I find hard is that you're talking to councillors that are making local decisions. You get a real short set time to speak, and then you're shut off. So if there's a lack of understanding, which I certainly found in our borough council, they were coming up with statistics that really contradicted the truth. You couldn't go back to them and say, actually, that's not true. You just had to sit there in silence or risk upsetting the meeting and being thrown out, which did get close at one point.
So is there more that we could do in the background, sort of as the NFU or as members, to sort of educate in the lead up to these sorts of things?
Just engaging with councillors and MPs, everybody, as much as possible. It is that knowledge transfer, because it did shock me how little people understood.
Listeners will hopefully be inspired by your story. If you had one message for other farmers about them, the importance of pulling together and campaigning, what would it be?
You know your farm and you know what you do. So why would you trust somebody else to tell your story when you can tell it yourself? And a lot of people are worried about, putting the head above the parapet, but actually you can never be wrong if you're just being honest and telling the truth. So that's what we all need to be doing out there. And whether that's in the media or whether that's going directly to your MP and government or councils, that's what we all need to be doing.
You've got a lot going on, especially over the last 14 months. The question I had is, how do you fit all this in around running your farm?
It's just a passion. Yes, my wife and my family sometimes drives them mad that I'm always popping off to different meetings. You fit it in, you find ways of doing it. And when it's a passion, you don't really notice the time it's taking up. But one of the best things I did, although I am, quite vocal and seen on social media a lot, I've actually stopped all my own social media accounts now. I found that was no good for myself. I was getting too engrossed and not doing the world a good for my own mental health. And I've walked away from all that. And that's been the best move I've made.
I deleted my Facebook and Instagram a week ago off my phone because I was in exactly the same position.
You won't regret it, honestly.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And it's been, and you don't realise actually the amount of time you waste that doom scrolling or just 5 minutes here and there, and actually it all stacks up, it all adds up. And it's the time in between when I used to be thinking for hours about, how should I post this? What should I post?
Sure.
I still post now, but other people do it for me. If there's something I want to say, I'll make a video. I put it on a WhatsApp group chat with friends and they post things for me.
Yeah, I guess, social media is great for getting stories out there, and it's been amazing for our sector. My girlfriend's regularly looking at cow trimming videos at the moment.
Everybody's
it's
obsessed
a trend.
with
What's
trimmers.
that about? Yeah. But yeah, I think you got to have that balance. And if you find it hard to control how much you're using it, it's like anything. You've just got to
absolutely
take it into your own hands. But
yes.
Is there anything else you want to say to listeners whilst you've got the chance?
You're the best in the world at what you do, and just be proud of it and own it, and don't be afraid of honesty, because that is what the public need. If we can be upfront and honest about what we're doing, we keep their trust, and that's important.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks, Charles. It's been really good to talk to you.
No, thank you very much.
Well, that's all from us here at NFU Conference 2026. If you want to find out any more information, please head over to the show notes, and we'll see you next time.